Now, this Genesis chapter 50 is an episode about the burial of Jacob. When Jacob died, Joseph took Jacob's body and they went to bury him. And they went to bury him in Canaan. Let's listen to what happened and pay attention to what is said about Egyptians and Canaanites and the name of the place.
So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the house of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's house. Only their little ones, their flocks, and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great gathering. Then they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they mourned there with a great and very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a deep mourning of the Egyptians." Therefore its name was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan.
All right, so we see that all the house of Joseph, then his brothers who had come from Canaan, and his father's house, meaning Joseph's siblings and their wives and their children, what we call the patriarchs, except their little ones and their animals and their herds. Everybody left the land of Goshen and they went up to go bury Jacob. When they got, after they had mourned for like 7 days, they arrived in Canaan. And when the inhabitants of the land, which is the Canaanites or Canaanites, saw the mourning, how many people are mourning and how grievous it was, they said, "This is a grievous mourning to the Egyptians." They're saying this is a big deal for the Egyptians. So they're identifying this group of Joseph and all the chariots and everything. They're thinking these are all Egyptians. And they're identifying them as Egyptians because Egyptians live in the same land, which is Africa, as Canaanites, just like we saw up there. So the Canaanites are seeing these are dark-skinned people like themselves. And they're saying these guys, this morning is a big deal. And so they called that place Abel Mizraim. Mizraim is this word here, which means Egypt. It's very common in Africa up to today to name places or people after places, or to name places after people. Just like you have these countries are named after people. Now here they named a land after a person called Mizraim. Let's carry on.
So Joseph went up to bury his father, and
excuse me, need to move it forward. Okay, thank you. Now let's talk about Jacob, who was Joseph's father. This scripture says, "Therefore thus says the Most High, who redeemed Abraham, concerning the house of Jacob. Jacob shall not now be ashamed, neither shall his face now wax pale." The word for pale in the Strong's Concordance is hava. It's pronounced as quelva. I'm saying that very comfortably because that's how we pronounce it up to today in the Kamba language. And it means to be white. So like if you were to say, my face is growing pale or is getting pale, you would say, my face is quelva. It's turning white. Or my hair is turning white. You'd say my hair is quelva. Very similar pronunciation as what is written in here. So the Most High is saying Jacob's face will not turn white. Question is, if it was to turn white, what color is it turning white from? Can a white face turn white? No. Can a black or brown face turn white? Yes. Gets pale. So Jacob must have been a dark-skinned person. Now, Jacob's children are identified as the children of Israel or the children of Isolele. Let's see how they are addressed and what we are told about what they look like. Of course, we expect them to look like their father, but let's see what the scripture tells us. Does it add up? So here, the Most High says, speak unto the children of Israel. And he's telling this to Aaron and Moses. And he's telling them how to deal with leprosy. If the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, okay, so if you have a bright spot and it's turning white, it's turning your skin white in your flesh, and inside be not deeper than the skin, it's not deeper than the skin, it's just on the surface, and the hair thereof is not turning white. Oops. Vincent, if you could mute. Thank you. All right, so if the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and inside be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut him that has the plague 7 days. Basically, the priest will quarantine you. If you all remember what we went through when we had the COVID epidemic or pandemic, you would be quarantined. This is what they were being told. So they were being told, look out, if somebody has a bright spot and their skin has turned white, or that spot has turned white, and it's not deeper than the skin, they have the plague. So if their skin is turning white, what color would it have to be before it turns white? It would have to be black or brown. So the children of Israel, the nation of Israel, were black or brown people. Okay. The instructions continue and they say, then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy has covered all his flesh, if somebody's whole skin has been covered by this leprosy, he shall pronounce him clean as that has the plague. It is all turned white. He is clean. So if all your body is covered in whiteness, you're okay, you're healed. That's how they determined who was well, who was okay. You can get out of quarantine. Again, your skin would only turn white if it is originally black or brown. So the Israelites, Isolele, the children of Jacob, were black or dark-skinned. The math is mathing up. It's adding up. This is in Exodus. This is a different episode. This is Moses. This was when Moses had just had the experience of the burning bush in Exodus chapter 3, where the Most High told him he's sending him to go tell Pharaoh to let his people go. And Moses asked, so how am I going to prove to these guys if they ask me who sent you? And the Lord said furthermore to Moses, put now your hand into your bosom. Just your hand. Put your hand in your bosom. And Moses put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. Okay. So his hand turned whitish or white. And it looked like it was leprous. So question is, what color was his hand before it turned white? It could not have been white, because it says his hand was now leprous as snow. Let's see what happened next. The Most High said, now put thy hand into your bosom again. So Moses put his hand into his bosom again and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. So now his hand turned back to the black and brown color of the rest of his body. That is how he knew that the Most High was with him, that the Most High was going to be with him. because Moses could not turn the color of his hand by himself. Numbers chapter 12, verse 10. This is the episode where Miriam was not happy with some marital decisions that Moses had taken. And it says, and the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. She had become whitish. What was she? Miriam was Moses' sister. What color was Miriam in appearance before she became white as snow? Black or brown? She could not have been white, as we call it, before she got the leprosy. Let's go at Lamentations and look at some other characters. It says here in Lamentations chapter 4, verse 6, for the punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people. We all know who the Most High refers to as my people. That is Isolele, that is so-called Israel in the scriptures. It describes them as their visage or their visage is blacker than a coal. They are black. That's what it's saying. There's no other way to put it. They are black, or the so-called black. Job describes his skin as being black upon me. This is Job. Job, the one who lost everything, his family, his animals, everything, and then at the end, God restored double to him. Job describes his skin as black upon me. In the Song of Songs, one of Solomon's lovers, a lady, says, I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar. Kedar means black. Guess the tents were also black, and that word means black. As the curtains of Solomon. So even Solomon had black curtains. I mean, she's emphasizing this like 3 times. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. For many of you who may not know, who will watch this, when we, the so-called brown or black people, spend a lot of time outdoors, like this daughter of this lady did, she spent a lot of time in the vineyards. So when you spend a lot of time in the vineyards and you get hit by the sun, we get blacker, we get darker, right? If we spend less time in the sun, we get a bit lighter. So she is saying, I am black because I've been spending a lot of time in the sun, because I've been looking after the vineyards. But she's saying, I am beautiful. And black is beautiful. And brown is beautiful. So we are seeing that one of Solomon's lovers, a woman here, is described as being black. Now let's talk about the New Testament, because there are some people who will say, well, that was in the Old Testament. What about the New Testament? This is from the books of Acts, chapter 13.
Acts chapter 13, verse 1. Now there were in the church that at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas, and Simeon that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul.
Okay, so these were prophets and teachers. Barnabas, Simeon, that was also called Niger. The audio there pronounced it as Niger, just like we pronounce that country in West Africa today. But if you open the concordance and you read and you play the pronunciation, it's Niger, which is derived from Greek. And even in Portuguese today, they use that word to refer to black people. Negro, that's where it's derived from. So Simeon, that was also called black. That's what the word means, black. It also is a synonym for followers of Christ or Christians. Now, these guys who were hanging around with Simeon, Barnabas, Lucius, Manaen, okay, even Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul, all these guys were hanging out together. Do you think they looked like Simeon, who was black and was called black? Or do you think they were just happening to be meeting him for a short while? It says there were at Antioch certain prophets and teachers. Birds of a feather flock together. These were their buddies. These were the people they studied the law and the scriptures with. And they were most likely from the same cloth. They were black like them. Here is Paul having an encounter with a captain of the Roman Empire. Let's see what happens.
Acts chapter 21, verses 37 to 39. Then as Paul was about to be led into the barracks, he said to the commander, "May I speak to you?" He replied, "Can you speak Greek? Are you not the Egyptian who some time ago stirred up a rebellion and led the 4,000 assassins out into the wilderness?" But Paul said, "I am a Jew from Tarsus, in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city, and I implore you, permit me to speak to the people."
Okay, so Paul asks the captain in Greek, "May I speak to you?" The captain is surprised. Why is the captain surprised that Paul is speaking Greek? Well, it tells us, the captain says, "Aren't you that Egyptian?" So Paul is a black guy, just like all the Egyptians were. And the captain is surprised that there's an Egyptian, or who he thinks is an Egyptian, who speaks Greek, which is a language that is mostly spoken in Europe by the Greeks. That's why he's surprised that this black guy speaks Greek. And then he thinks he's an Egyptian. That's the confirmation that he gives us, that captain gives us. But Paul tells him, "No, I am a Jew." So Paul is telling us other Jews like him were also black. And they would have been confused for Egyptians. You couldn't tell them apart. Just like this captain couldn't tell them apart, whether it was an Egyptian or a Jew. That's a confirmation that the Jews, who are really the descendants of Judah, or the people that lived in that territory, which was mostly Judah, Benjamin, and a few Levites. All of them were descendants of Jacob, who was black. So they were all black. Of course, we know about the other people who later on converted to a religion. You can convert to any religion, but you cannot change your appearance or your DNA. Converting does not change those things to make you have the bloodline of a certain people. All right, let's wrap it up here with other characters in the Bible, specifically angels. Daniel here is talking about an angel. And we know he's talking about an angel because in this second verse in Daniel chapter 10, verse 11, it says, "Am I now sent?" That is what the angel says. So anyway, Daniel describes this angel this way. His body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto you, and stand upright, for unto you am I now sent. Okay. If you read the rest of those of chapter 10 there, you'll see the angel actually mentions how he had been prevented from coming directly to him, and he spent some time with the archangel Michael. So this angel in Daniel's description has feet, or color of his feet look like polished brass, just like the Son of Man. just like you and I that might be watching this that are part of Isolele, or the so-called black and brown people. We just read this last week from the Testament of Jacob. And this verse here says in chapter 3, this is Jacob. Jacob lifted his eyes towards the radiance of the angel who was speaking to him, who was in appearance and in face like his father Isaac. He was afraid and troubled. The angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Jacob. I am the angel who has been with you from your youth." We just saw today what Jacob looked like. And now we are being told that there was an angel that looked in the face like Jacob's father and in appearance like Jacob's father, Isaac. Now, if Jacob was a black or brown person, goes without say that obviously Isaac was a black and brown person as well. That is it for today. Let's get into some discussion.